So at any point at the end of, once you decide you're done animating a section, it's just time to go ahead and render it. So the way we would render that is we'd set things up just the way we did before, use some of the denoising options like we covered before. Set this to something reasonable. And again, this depends on your computer, or maybe you're rendering in the cloud. I actually usually render in the cloud on a service called RenderStreet. I'm not affiliated with them at all. I do have an affiliate link, which I'll somehow try to include. I want to do a whole video on, why I think that paying for a cloud service is worth it, but I don't want to say the name RenderStreet too much because I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I just, at one point, was looking for a cloud rendering service, and they just work. It's just been good. The support's been decent, so I haven't really tried anything else, if I'm being honest. But for me, rendering something like this, I might set the samples up to 500 or so if I don't need it right away, maybe up to like 900. There are some limits with RenderStreet and other cloud services as to how long something can take, but you can pretty much always pay more and overcome those limits. But if you're rendering on your own machine, just do something that works for you. A lot of times people ask me like, oh, this is really taking a long time to render. Animation rendering is no joke, especially if you're rendering with cycles. Some of these frames could take several minutes to render, maybe even 15, 20 minutes, depending on your computer and how you have the sampling set. And that's just for one frame. So if you're doing 150 frames and you're doing 3 different animations that are each 5 seconds like that, you are looking at several days of rendering, could be depending on your hardware and kind of how you're doing things. So figure out what works for you, but set your samplings, get your denoising and things all set up. And the biggest point I want to make here is that when you're rendering out, you do not want to render to a video format. You want to render to frames. And that's because it's kind of like, if something messes up, or you say like, oh, for example, like I've got this big black area here. What if I did not realize that right at the beginning of the animation was, there was like a little piece of that black kind of coming into the shot, and I just didn't notice it. Had you rendered to a video, it's going to be much more difficult to re-render just a small section and splice that perfectly back in. Whereas if you have the frames, you basically have, all the data, and it's not like it takes any less time to render it straight to video. It takes the same amount of time. So given that you are investing all that, computational time, your electricity bill, you're not pulling your hair out, etc., you want to be sure you have all the results of basically that work. So you always want to be rendering to a set of frames. And, for example, I can go into my tutorial folder here and show you all the things I've rendered. So, you would end with, basically just a big file with, each frame rendered, and you can just pan through these. And these are all full quality PNGs. You can see each one of these images is 1.4 megabytes or so. And those all get strung together. You can see the ones with more color data are a little bit bigger. But those all get strung together into whatever software you want. You can basically, once you have all the frames, you can do it actually within Blender. And maybe I'll show you how to do that right now that we're talking about it. I'm just going to open up a new file, and we'll just not save that because I don't think I made any big changes. Let me show you really quickly how you would do, after you've rendered out all those frames, how you would string those together. So one thing you can do is go into, actually you can do File, New, and there's actually this video editing preset. We're going to use that. That just kind of sets your scene up how you like. So what you want to do is just make sure you've matched the resolution as well as the frame rate. And then you can just go into Add Image Sequence, and then you want to navigate to wherever you have your frames saved. I can go to Open2, for example. I rendered this a couple times. Select all those with A, same command you would use like if you're working in 3D space, and then that'll load them all in. And now if you just press spacebar, it's going to play through them. So it's all way out of order there. Okay, so I think it's because Add Image Sequence. I think it's because I'm sorted by date. Yeah, I want to be sorted by name here. Okay. So I added those in at a weird angle or at a weird order. And it will add them where your playhead is. So you just need to move that over. But now if we just press spacebar to play it, you can see, I mean, obviously this is, it's not actually rendering because we already rendered those frames. It's just, it's just pulling them together. And this is going to be the fastest way, especially if you don't have a software like After Effects, to go through and, put your frames together into an actual video format that you could upload somewhere. So once you have this set up, then you can change this to a video file. For example, I would use FFmpeg video, and then for the encoding, QuickTime I think tends to work well, or MPEG-4. I'm really not an expert in this field, but I think MPEG-4 with the H.264 video codec would work well. And then you could specify an output folder, render it, and then you have a video file wherever this output is set. So that's kind of the quick and dirty on how to actually turn those frames into a video that you can use. But I think what I'll do, just so that nothing's left off the table, is open up my After Effects file in the next video and walk you through just kind of some of the things I did to add text and do some basic fades and things like that. I did use After Effects, which is capable of some pretty advanced stuff, but if I'm being honest, the types of things I did in there would be available in just about any. I mean, I think you could do it in the Blender video sequence editor. I'm just not as familiar with that. But I know a lot of people probably do have access to Adobe Creative Cloud. And like I said, the things I'm doing in there, the fades, adding the text, that's all relatively basic, and almost any video editor should have those types of capabilities. So I'm going to call it quits on that one there. And yeah, just wrap up a few more parts, and we'll be on our way. I'll be looking forward to seeing what you all come up with. Thanks for being here.